From the Great Central Fire, today we had a new format. We actually had a pair of guests, two of the Walsh boys, Mike and Robbie, longtime Kooch campers and staff. And boy, it was great to visit with them today. And you guys are really going to enjoy this episode. We were able to talk about how they found out about camp in St. Louis, the impact that Tim Heinley had, and a few great stories of him at camp. We revisited the one and only Koochaching Man story with Jamie Varley, the impact that camp has had on their lives and their professions moving forward, which was outstanding. Hanging a Jeep in the dining hall. You'll need to hear that one. We shared stories to get others to participate in the podcast, and we invite you to do so. And then, of course, we threw a couple questions at Mike and Robbie at the end that you'll enjoy hearing. So sit back and relax and enjoy our conversation with Mike and Robbie Walsh. From the Great Central Fire today, oh boy, everybody, get the seatbelts on, strap it in. We are first time on this podcast doing two people at the same time. And, just being a long-time camp person, a lot of names come through there that jump out at you that are big-time names and big part of the tradition. And today we've got two guys whose family is certainly fits that. And what a fun time we're going to have today talking with Robbie and Mike Walsh.
Yeah.
Fellas, how are we doing today?
We're doing good, Jeff. This is fun to be in front of the camera for once, in front of the microphone.
Are you in Utah, Robbie?
Yeah, Jeff, thanks for having me. I'm in Park City, Utah.
So. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Long time listener, first time. Yeah.
Well, we're glad you guys are on here. And what's that, Mike?
Real quick before we get into the meat of this conversation, Jeff, I think some listeners out there may know this, but creation of the podcast, producing the podcast is something that I've been helping out with. So I've been kind of behind the scenes on all the episodes so far, and it's just so exciting to see this thing come together. And Jeff, you've been, like Rob said, you've been doing an awesome job.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that, but we both know what's running this thing, and that's you. I'm just on the microphone and taking directions from you.
That's right.
It's been a fun way to re-engage with camp and learn and hear some of these stories. So I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we want to keep telling them. And so I can't wait for today. I'm sure there'll be a few laughs in this one. This is going to be good.
No, we're going to keep it really serious, Jeff. This is
okay. Good luck.
Very serious tone.
Yeah.
Match the vibe.
Yeah. Whatever. That's not going anywhere near that. But hey, let's talk. I love talking with people about how they found out about camp, your family. I know your older brother, Pat, was he first coming to camp before you guys?
Was, yeah.
And then, of course, Brendan, I had in my cabin. And then Robbie on a trip. And then, Mike, you were younger. I didn't have you in. You were in the earlier camps, and then I was out of there by the time you kept moving through. But how did you guys originally find out about it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll kind of give my version of it. Rob, you chime in. The way I always kind of tell the story of how we found camp, it all traces back to Artie Hewer.
Yeah.
And I know that name's going to, ring a bell for a lot of people. But, long story short, our oldest brother, Patrick, the understanding was that Patrick needed something to do in the summer. And he was causing some headaches for the family and for our parents in particular. And they identified a camp out in Colorado to send him to. I think somebody probably recommended, like, hey, get him outdoors, get him out of the house, get him, doing active things in the summertime. And he was all set up to go to this camp in Colorado. And the year he was supposed to go, it closed down. Rob, am I correct on that?
Yeah, I think it was called Holy Cross.
Holy Cross.
1986.
And, when that happened, Mom and Dad said, all right, now what? What's plan B? And that's where Artie Ewer said, you should check out this place up in Minnesota called Camp Kooch. And it's kind of all history from there. They sent Patrick up that summer for 8 weeks. I think he was an intermediate that first year, which I think would have been like maybe 85 or 86.
It was summer of 86.
Yeah.
And the way I heard, just to add on, I I think there was a note that came through and they said 4 boys in St. Louis. And I think Tim Heinle was there within a couple days knocking on the door.
He's like, I'm getting them all.
Wait a minute. 4. Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah. And I think the way I've heard my parents talk about it, Patrick came home a changed kid. They really saw a big difference in him and he loved it. And the way I understood it was from there, it was like, all right, they're all going. And so the next summer it was Patrick went back and our brother Brendan went back for 8 weeks as an intermediate or went for the first time. And then, staggered us in. So then after a couple of summers, then Rob started going. Rob, you were 88, I think was your first summer.
Yeah, you have it right. We had to rotate in and out just because, obviously, it's camp's not free.
Kind of hit the pocketbook a little bit there.
Yeah, right. Oh, sure.
So my first summer Patrick was not there, but Brendan was there an intermediate. And
right.
I was there as a first year junior.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then I think, big picture, Patrick ended up going for 9 summers. Brendan went for 2 summers. And the way I understood Brendan absolutely loved it and still cherishes those 2 summers. But I think his priorities in those years, those high school years, were on swimming, a job, girls. Right.
Yeah.
And so loved it, but it just, he wasn't in it for the long run, which was fine.
And Mike, he was a really serious competitive swimmer. He ended up swimming in college and
at Miami, Ohio. Yeah.
Yeah. I went to the nationals. Like he was way.
Where did he go to school? Where did Brendan go to school?
Miami, Ohio.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Loved camp, but didn't do the long runs that we did. And Rob, you ended up doing, I think, 11 summers total.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically all, late 80s and then all of the 90s.
And then I was right behind you. So my summer of 89, I was a first year junior, went up for 8 weeks. And I was in love with camp before I ever even went up there, because I was the caboose, as mom and dad used to call me, and watched my older brothers go to this place. And I would come up at the end to visit and pick them up. And I was just counting the days until it was my turn to go to Kooch. This just sparked my memory, but I remember chanting when I was, 10 years old, I'm a future Koocher. I'm a future Koocher. I'm a future Koocher.
That's good.
I used to say it over and over again all the time.
In those early years too, Mike, I went up as a first year junior and I skipped my second year junior. Tim moved me from a first year junior to a first year intermediate.
Okay.
Because he wanted to keep Mike and I separate. So we had our own sort of camp experience.
Our own lane.
Which I thought was, in hindsight, a really, really cool thing that he did.
I forgot about that. That does make sense. Yeah. But that's kind of the story. And I mean, obviously all 4 of us just absolutely fell in love with the place and still are in love with the place to this day.
And then, God, we miss her badly. Your mom worked at camp for a while.
Oh yeah. Marion Walsh.
I know my mom would always say so many wonderful things. I wasn't really working there then.
Yeah.
I knew your mom well, but my mom would just come home and talk to your mom in the off season quite a bit.
Yeah.
Oh, they were buds.
They were buds.
Yeah, they got really close.
Well, it's funny, Rob, I want to hear your thoughts on this too. But when my mom fell in love with the place like we did. And I think when she let us know that she was kind of thinking about going to work for camp, we were kind of like, what? Really?
It was kind of a lukewarm reception, I think.
Yeah.
Mom, we're trying to get away from you, Mom.
And I remember us processing that, saying like, okay, hold on. Like, part of what we love about camp is that we get away and be independent up there on our own. And it's our own thing. And wait, Mom's going to be there now? This is going to be terrible, And it ended up being the best thing ever.
Yeah, she loved
it. Because we quickly realized kind of the perks that came from having your mom up there. Laundry, cash when you need it.
She had a boat.
And then when we were older, we're going on town days. It was always such a nightmare trying to find a lift into town or, try to get over early or whatever. Rob and I had access to Mom's boat when we were in those older staff years. And that was huge. And then I think, and she was so good about understanding to keep her distance when she needed to. If you're kind of crossing paths on the island, she wouldn't kind of meddle in our affairs up there at camp, which was so cool that she understood that. And when we needed stuff, we would be able to go down and access her cabin down in the point, and she would help us out with so many things. So it was so great.
But she understood it too. She understood what it was about and knew to keep her distance so that you guys could have your experience,
100%. And then became kind of her own, she formed her own posse. I mean,
Yeah.
your mom, Rita Black.
Yeah.
And they stirred some shit up too. I mean, they would.
We'll get to that. I've got a few stories.
They were ornery. I'll be the first to tell you, my mom was funny. I mean, she did some funny stuff.
I mean, the big one that comes to mind is hanging up the Jeep in the dining room, right? But I don't know.
Oh, I wasn't there then. That was the, I remember hearing about that. Well, I don't know if you guys know this, but that started years ago. Something else was hung in the dining room. It was Phineas Hagelin bought a boat, and it only went in reverse. He thought he was going to get himself a boat, and it only went in reverse when he first got it. And I mean, poor Finn, the people were just killing him about this boat. So they decided, and I got a picture of it. They decided to go hang it in the dining hall. So one morning, Finn came into breakfast. His boat was hanging in the dining hall over his table.
Wait, so he bought the boat and would he use it and just go in reverse everywhere he went?
Well, yeah. He went across the parking spot in reverse. And then he went to town one night. Poor Finn. I mean, he just got, the jokesters up there. We parked at Spring Lodge at that time. I don't know if everybody may remember Spring Lodge, which is kind of right next to Ogeechee over there.
Sure.
And back in Franks Bay. But he went to town for his night off and came back at midnight or whatever to come back to camp. And somebody had untied his boat from the dock. They lifted it out of the water. And this was a big boat. I mean, it took probably 10, 12 guys. I mean, and they put it in this parking spot. So I think he had to sleep in his car that night and get a ride in the morning or something. So, I mean, all that kind of goofy stuff was going on, but.
Man. Well, yeah, I mean, the pranks, there's so many. And, some guys are so good at remembering pranks. So we'll do our best to remember this stuff as we talk through this here today, Jeff.
Yeah, I don't know if it's safe to bring some of these things up or not. I don't want to
Some of them we can't.
Initiate people, setting their mind in motion to do some crazy things. I don't want to certainly do that, but
I was coming home late from a town night, and we'll jump off just as we talk about dining hall and hanging stuff in there. I was heading back to the senior camp, and I was a counselor, and I think I was with Dave Shahan or Matt Brokaw, and we came running up, and it was late at night, and there was a bunch of kids, a bunch of senior campers inside the dining hall, and they were moving a boat into the dining hall, and they got it stuck in the door. And I had my flashlight with me, and of course I wasn't going to allow this.
Yeah.
And I let them have it. I said, "What are you guys doing? What the hell?" And there was a few other choice words in there. And I lift my flashlight and I look at who's in charge, and it's Rita and my mom.
Oh, yeah.
So I turned my flashlight off and ran the other direction.
Oh my
I didn't
God.
see any of it.
Well, Rob, that was the Jeep that got stuck in the door.
I remember it got stuck in the doorway.
Yeah, it was that military Jeep that Steve Applegate brought up. It was such a cool vehicle.
It was like from Ronald Reagan's ranch or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was like one of the original military Jeeps, old school, and he had it on the island, and it was such a cool vehicle. But I think the idea was that a lot of people didn't know why he had done that, and he was talking about it a lot, and so I think to kind of poke fun at him, the decision was made to shove it into the dining hall.
It was a Jeep. That's right.
Oh, don't be proud and tell everybody about it up there. You're going to get exposed.
Well, and then Rob, if you remember, then we all came back from a town night, and it was mom that was like leading the charge.
She was, she had round everybody up to do it.
And
people may not know that till right now.
They couldn't get it through the doorway, that main doorway you enter for meals.
Yeah,
and so they tried even taking off some of the like the frame of the door to get it through, and that didn't work. So they took the Jeep apart. They took the tires off, and they ended up turning it sideways and got it in. And then they hung the tires up individually. And so when we walked into the dining hall in the morning, pieces of the Jeep were hanging on climbing ropes from the rafters.
Unbelievable.
So Steve Applegate, if you're listening, send us your voice note about it.
Right. We're sorry.
You remember
I
that?
wasn't there.
But I want to, speaking of that, I want to pivot because Jeff, I want to ask you for a second. You've been the interviewer here for, what is it, 6 episodes now? We've done 6 or so,
about that.
like that. and it's been so much fun. And I want to let listeners know that, the Jamie Varley episode was really kind of a test run, because I got to give Jeff props here. Jeff's never done anything like this before. And to be expected to hop on a microphone and have an interview style conversation with somebody for over the course of an hour is not easy to do. But Jeff, you're a natural and you've done so great at this. And it's been so much fun to hear these. And when Jamie came on in his first episode, he's a good friend of mine, obviously, and Rob's. And it was so awesome to hear Jamie. And you guys touched on something that I wanted to hear more about. And that's the Kooch Man.
Yep. Well, it was a skit. And this is what I heard. So the only reason I know this is I was with Tim Heinley walking down the path, and Varley, Jamie, who was like a junior or an intermediate, maybe a junior or something, comes flying down the path, and Tim goes, "Hey, Kooch man, come here. What are you out saving right now?" And I looked at Tim, I said, "Kooch man?" He said, "Yeah, that's the Kooch man." And then I heard about the skit that they put on.
Yeah.
I think Troy Balser was his counselor, Troy's a great friend of mine. And they had a skit in the lodge, and he was the Kooch man. They had him dressed up in a cape and a big white outfit, and he was flying around fixing all the problems at Camp Kooch. There's anything there was a leak in the boat. I'll fix it. I'm the Kooch man, or whatever it was. So
Kooch man saved the day. So I asked Jamie about that because I wanted to hear more about Kooch man. Because even when Jamie comes to visit these days, my dad still calls him Kooch man. There's still a lot of people who do that. So this is I reached out to him because I was kind of bummed I didn't hear more about it, and I had him record a little note. And so let's listen together.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Jamie talking about going a little deeper on Kooch man. You guys ready? Here we go.
Yeah. The story of Kooch man is great, and one of my fondest memories of camp growing up. It was summer of 1989. I was in cabin 6. Troy Balser was the counselor for that cabin. And the preps and the juniors were in camp, and I think the intermediates and seniors were still out. And so we had a skit night. And so we had to come up with a skit to perform in front of, the entire camp down at the lodge. And so Troy, I think, was the one that came up with the idea for it. But the premise was that there was Kooch man, who was a superhero, and he would fly in to save the day during various scenarios that happen every day at camp. And so we came up with all these different sketches, to kind of illustrate this superhero coming in and saving the day. Troy asked me to be Kooch man, and he threw me in a pair of white tights, the onesie white tights. And then we had this big green towel that we turned into a cape. And then Troy found some white hockey tape or something, just like you wrap around your hockey stick or whatever. He found some hockey tape, and he put a big, huge K on the back of the cape, and that was my costume. And so we went down there, we did the skit. I think we won the prize for best skit, but I can't remember the sketches that we did, but there was one that I do remember very clearly because it got the most laughs. So one of the campers in the cabin played Tim Heinley, and Tim is sitting there. He's got his, foot up on a bench, and he's all bent out of shape. He's, worried about the rising cost of concrete, and he's lamenting over not buying more concrete when it was cheaper. And so naturally it's a moment for Kooch man to fly in and save the day. And I'll never forget, I came running in, and I went up to Tim and I go, "Here, Tim, here's some coupons to save money on concrete." And Tim was all excited that Kooch man saved the day by giving him coupons. And the entire lodge just erupted. I imagine the point staff probably got the biggest kick out of it. But after that, I knew that Kooch man, would probably live with me for a long time. And sure enough, Tim Heinley forever after that always used to call me Kooch man. He never called me Jamie ever again. It was always Kooch man.
Well, there you have it, guys. That's the part I wanted to hear, the coupon bit.
That's it. So he still got it. He's still tagged with that.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Well,
and
Jamie,
you guys have had fun.
Yeah. And I want to thank Jamie for doing that voice note. And listen, I think this is, Jeff, I want to make something clear to your audience here and the whole camp community. If you hear a story about yourself told on the show and you've got a different take on it, feel free to record a little voice memo on your phone and send it into from the Great Central Fire at fromthegreatcentralfire.com. No, I don't have an email address, but send it to me or Jeff. We'll get it on the show and we'll react to it. All right.
I think some have an obligation to, too. That's
I
a
agree with
challenge.
Robbie.
Yeah.
So Robbie, I've been flipping through Tump lines, just going nuts. I mean, it's been awesome. First of all, what I've realized is how old I am. And I'm trying to piece the timelines back together, reading all these things. But you and Matt Brokaw seem to be in the cabin a few times together. And then I could have sworn you are on our backpacking trip when we went out to the Canadian Rockies.
You have that right. Yeah,
you and Matt. I don't know who else was on the trip, but I know you and Matt were on it.
We were.
With Tim Stewart.
I think Dave Park was on that. I think Swope Clark might have been on that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But no, great memory. And I similar to you, Jeff, like what's been really fun about this whole exercise is the research I got to do. And I didn't go too deep. I didn't want to, but just to sort of stitch together those summers and where I was in my life, where I was in school, how old I was, whose cabin I was in, whose trip I went on. So that's been a highlight for the last couple of weeks but you're right. It was Tim Stewart, we went on a backpacking trip, and the only time I've ever heard of us going out to Canadian Rockies.
Yeah, I've been out there before, but not to this area. It was a little town called Field.
Yep.
And it was kind of a broken up. We had to go for like 5 or 6 days and then get back and go onto a different trail and go in another 3 or 4 days on another trail.
Do you remember standing on top of the ski jump in Calgary?
Yeah, we went through Calgary. We showed you guys the Olympic Village. Yes.
Yeah, I remember all that. I have an early memory of that. And you and Tim just had us in stitches like all the time. The way you two would go back and forth, just hilarious. That was a lot of fun.
I remember the backpacking trips. Mike, did you backpack, Mike?
I loved the backpacking trips.
Okay, it's a total different philosophy of cooking because you got groups of 4 or 3 or whatever.
Yep.
And then, the canoe trips, it's just the whole gang in the one pot meal thing, but you got your little cooking stove. So it was me and Stu, and it might have been Robbie in our group. I can't remember, but Stu forgot his bowl. So he would let me and Robbie take what we want. He'd eat out of the pot or the bag if it was cereal. That was his meal container, and that was the end of it.
And wasn't he's I remember Stu. Didn't he play basketball?
He did. He played at Miami of Ohio. Now he's a big time official. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Yep. He played at Miami of Ohio as well, where Brendan went. Yeah.
That was fun. That same summer, Coles, I was on a canoe trip with your dad.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember that. I remember one thing I remember most about that whole canoe trip was your dad used to wake up in the morning and he would recite the previous night's Reds game, the whole play-by-play, and he was making it all up.
Oh yeah.
He would be like, oh, in the second inning and the third inning this, and they called in this, and it was the count, and he would like recite the whole game. We like, hey Bugs, how'd the Reds do last night? And he would just go on and basically give you the whole play-by-play. And there was a whole debate on the lake that day of whether he was full of shit or not.
Oh well, that's part of that is because he would get questions. This happened in the past. Like day 7 of a canoe trip, his bowman would turn around and say, Bugs, how did the Reds do last night? It's like, how the hell am I supposed to know? I mean, just goofy questions like that from kids,
Yeah.
He was always, he always had something, man. It was great. He'd sit there and tell stories, and he had a way of describing things.
I feel like I'm, kind of missing out on the Bugs and even you, Jeff, because, I think the summer I came up, I think was the first summer you kind of stopped going.
Full time, about 90 or so?
It was 89 was my first summer.
I was still there. I think your brother I had in like 87 or 88 in my cabin. Brendan was in my cabin, actually.
Okay, yeah. I actually saw that on a Tump line. But I didn't really get to know you until, we were adults, really.
Right. That's exactly right.
And your dad was always around, but I never did any trips with your dad. And I feel like I didn't really get to know him that well until I was much older.
Well, I heard many stories. I mean, I knew who you were. Obviously, I knew Robbie and I knew Brendan and I knew Pat. But Bart would talk a lot. Vollmer, who's a good friend of mine, and he said the one year I ran the senior camp, you and Varley were in it.
Yeah.
And he said it took the Christmas for my face to not be sore because I laughed the whole summer with these two knuckleheads running around talking about being in this area and when you came back and all that
Oh
stuff.
my gosh. Yeah, we still do that on a weekly basis. Rob knows.
Have you heard that, Rob?
Oh yeah.
Oh gosh.
I mean, there's so many jokes, so many bits that we've done over the years. I remember being a junior camper with Jamie, and we're in the junior council ring during like one of the after lunch meetings, and he and I standing up and performing some bit and just making the whole crowd laugh. It was so much fun.
That's what it's all about, man. That color, that fun stuff. I'll tell you, I've seen pictures of you two too with Grand Council. You guys weren't in Grand Council till like dance number 5, the other Buffalo or something when you were counselor. So there's pictures of you guys playing tennis in your whole. You got the tennis rackets out. You're hitting the tennis ball around while the line's going into the council. And you guys weren't in there dance 5. So
in the old days.
Weren't you in charge of Indian dancing?
I was.
88. Yeah, it was. Because I remember that summer you let me be an incense bearer.
Absolutely. But Rob, 93, I was flipping through stuff, and I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but I was going through the Tump line. This is good, I think, for people to hear. You wrote a blurb in the Tump line. Did you read this? It's staff man Rob Walsh talks about growing. Have you read this, Mike?
Nope. Let's hear it.
Well, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I want to read this paragraph that's down here. I thought it was awesome. Situations like shooting powerful rapids, paddling into a day of wind and rain, or having to spend a cold night under a canoe gave me better insight into who I really am. I mean, this is true about everybody, and this is what it's about. I saw some things I liked about myself, but more importantly, I learned some things I did not like. And that really hit with me because when I went through these tough times, I found out, I wasn't the biggest fan of things when I was a young kid. I was a wimp, basically. And it took me older to figure out, hey, this is how this is, and got a whole new understanding of it. I realized sometimes with the help of a good swift kick that I had to put others before myself, and a negative attitude will not remedy a tough situation. So true.
No, I vaguely remember doing that. I think it was part of a high school essay that I think my mom had got a hold of and wound up in the Tump line. I remember that.
Yeah, your whole approach to the negative things that happen. But the other thing that I've heard about, in my ways, it kind of hit home with your quote there, Rob, is that, when things go wrong, a lot of times people think of themselves, and that's not the way it works up there. When things get tough, you got to worry about everybody else. And that really hit home. And I thought it was a great piece that you put out there. And, I really enjoyed reading it. So,
no, still. And a lot of that still applies today. That's as true today as it was, what's that, 30 plus years ago?
Well, but it helps us in our professional life. I'm sure you got cases in your professional lives. I mean, I draw on my experiences at camp all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Or I'll be going through a tough situation. Say, wait a minute, that portage on such and stuff, and I got through that, I can get through this, or, whatever the case may be. I draw on camp stuff all the time.
Oh, 100%. First off, Rob, I don't remember you writing that. In fact, that was really well written. If AI was around back then, I would guess that you used AI to write that, but I guess not.
I think it's in the 93 fall Tump line, if you want to look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jeff, I mean, I think that topic of what camp, to talk about what I think a lot of people have talked about this show, which is so important, but what camp gives you in terms of hard skills and soft skills. And as you get older, and I think this resonates with a lot of people, you realize more and more what you take away from that place and the types of things that you learn and apply to your everyday life. And we could talk for an hour just on that, Rob, you mentioned your college essay. I think that I used camp as an experience for my college essay. I've got a poster of the Law of the Woods here in my office that I look at every day, and just facing hard things, learning how to have grit and resilience in so many situations is just the core of what you take away from that stuff, And I think a lot of people probably identify with this too. When I first started going to camp, I did not like the canoe trips. And my first canoe trip was Quetico. It rained. It was really hard. We were in a 3-man aluminum boat. It was Jamie and I, and Ted Clark was our steersman. And grew to love Ted, but he was not, when I was 10 or 11 or whatever it was, I wasn't a big fan of Ted on that trip because he was
not warm and fuzzy.
No, he was old school. And I look back and understand it, but it was pretty tough when you're 11 years old and you're soaking wet and hungry and you're like, why am I doing this? And then you realize, of course, after the fact, but that really, in those early years of my junior and intermediate years, I always was excited to go backpacking because it was so different. I loved the mountains. I loved the different approach to tripping. And I would always do, it was 8 weeks every summer. So I'd always do one backpacking, one canoeing. And then, of course, as I got older, in my senior year, I did a senior trip finally. And then when I was on staff, I was in the prep camp for 1 year. I think I was in the intermediate camp for 1 year. And then I was in the senior camp on staff for the remainder of my handful of years. And I was taking out those big trips. And it really wasn't until those years when I really fell in love with canoe camping, so it took me a while.
That's what happened to me too, Mike. Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's been, I think you guys both touched on it. I think both my relationship to camp and my sort of understanding and appreciation of it and how it's evolved from a camper to a counselor to a trip head. And then when you roll into, and then you get into your professional life, you start to appreciate it more and more and more on a deeper level. And now that I've got kids going to Ogeechee and Kooch, it's a whole nother dimension that has just been really cool. And, I think there was moments when I started getting to college, I was out on my own. And then when I started getting into like early days of my professional career, you start to think about camp and all those things you learned and some of those practices and some of those habits that you developed. And you're like, wow, this is like a superpower that I have.
Yeah.
Now. And I like just that resilience and that attitude and that like, hey, I can do hard things.
Yeah.
And it's just that appreciation and gratitude just gets deeper and deeper and deeper as you get older, which has been really cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I want to get into some fun stories here in a second, but everybody listen to this. And everybody I talk to in this role now, re-engaging with so many alumni from the past and people I knew from the past, this has been like a dream come true for me, going through all these tump lines. But I encourage everybody to come back and visit camp at the end of the summer and just to be on Rainy Lake again, if you can do it. There is nothing that is more exhilarating and just warms your heart more than to walk into Thunderbird or the Muni or whatever it is and look up and see, oh my God, look who it is.
Yeah.
And to sit down with that person you haven't seen in forever and start telling stories, and the stories don't end. And it's just the most amazing feeling. So hopefully we can get people coming up, telling the stories. It's so much fun to see the old people from our past and the experiences that we shared up there. It's such a good time. So,
and I wanted to ask you, I started to talk about it a second ago, but you hosting this podcast, it's only been a handful of people, but what are some highlights for you so far doing this show? And what have you kind of discovered in these conversations you've had with like Kathy Dix, George Simmons? Have there been any highlights for you?
Well, I mean, I just learned, you learn a little bit about them, about how they found out about it. And then the names that come up that I know that, like Artie Hewer, for an example, just being there so long a long time as a kid. But just to hear their perspective on things too, and how, with Kathy's situation, how the girls' camp all got off the ground. And actually, if you go back and read some of the tump lines, they actually were trying to move the girls' camp in 92, 93. They thought it was going to start then.
Right.
Yeah.
They had, you can read it in the tump line. They thought it was ready to go then, but something fell through. I don't know what happened. And it didn't work out. But for me to reconnect all the dots with people and, I'll be talking to somebody and they'll do something and it'll completely trigger a memory in my mind that I remember. I'll give you an example. I was talking to somebody and Jesse Blair on his podcast. He said every time, and this is so true with me too, every time I hear that white-throated sparrow sing up on the island, it just makes me know that I'm there. And right away I said, hey, Jesse, you used to do the sound of a loon as well.
Yeah.
And I said, dude, and he started doing it right there on the podcast. I mean,
That show, yeah.
I mean, just things like that fire into my head. And then all these memories come flying back that I love. And I mean, I've forgotten so many of them.
Well, and Jesse's laugh. I mean, you had talked up Jesse. I didn't know, I had never met him. And when we recorded his episode, his laugh alone was like infectious.
Oh,
you know,
he was
hearing his
incredible.
laugh. And what a dynamic guy. That was so fun to hear.
But for me to talk to all the people from the different eras has been so much fun. And to talk to people not only at camp, but I'll get you know, and we'll get other people on here as well, you know, whether it be with Owakanzi or whatever, you know, just to tell the whole story with the Camping and Education Foundation.
I want to pause for a second too and just reiterate to the audience here, Jeff, you know, if there's anybody out there listening that feels compelled to come on the show and tell their story and talk about their experience at camp, let us know.
Let us know.
You know, it's an open invite for the camp community to come on the show. This is what this is all about.
Absolutely. You know? And we want to keep telling the story on this podcast. That's the whole purpose of it.
And get people to send in their, you know, stories, but also react to stories, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, flipping through these top lines has been great. What I didn't realize, you know, I was flipping through and I saw that, you know, like Steve Heinley was your counselor, Mike, and Robbie,
12.
you were in Cabin 12 with Brokaw, and Jay Scrivener, who was a close friend of mine, was your counselor in Cabin 12. He was hilarious.
That's right.
Jay would come. He was the only counselor I knew, you know, when the counselors, you put the names on the bunks before the kids get there. You know, you walk in with all your stuff, you don't know, and you can see your name on the bunk, and that's where you go. Jay was the counselor. He put his name on, he went on the top bunk. You know, usually most counselors got all their stuff laid out on this big, huge Taj Mahal corner of the cabin. And here's Jay. He's got his name up on the top bunk. He stayed on the top bunk. He was so funny.
I was looking at the tump lines today earlier, and his name was listed on one of the cabin photos as, I think it was Jay Perfect.
Yeah.
Scrivener. Is that what it said?
Yeah, that was Tim Heinley probably naming him. Yeah.
Well, and then, of course, Tim puts him with Tony Ridgway. I don't know if you can get
the
two
Ridge.
different.
Ridge.
Yeah.
That's
great.
Where is Tony Ridgway? That's a name from the past.
Didn't Tony Ridgway, he went to high school with Axl Rose.
Yeah, he used to tell story. From Indianapolis, right? Wasn't he?
Yeah, it was Indianapolis, and I remember he would refer to him as Bill because Axl Rose's real name is Billy Bailey.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but he was my counselor 2 years in a row, and he was great.
He was so funny.
Yeah, he was such a cool dude.
Rob, didn't you have a story about intermediate camp with Butts one year?
Yeah, and before you say this, Robbie, this is what's be great about the tump line. I didn't realize Butts was younger than you guys.
Yeah.
So, I mean, me tying all these names in and people I knew and who's where and what has been fun. But Rob, Butts. I mean, let's start it on Butts here. Yeah, go ahead, Robbie.
Yeah, let's go right. So I was early on as a counselor. I think it was my second year as counselor. I was an intermediate, and for whatever reason, I didn't have a CIT or a second staff person in the cabin. And Butts was my only 8-weeker, and I think it was his second summer. And so at the changeover, right, you know, the first 4 weekers leave, and then you're waiting for the second 4 weekers to come, and there's always a day there where there's a gap. Well, for some reason, I guess I was gone. I don't know where I was. I think I could have been doing a garbage run, or maybe down in Minneapolis to go meet some flights.
Hanging a Jeep from the rafters, maybe.
Sure, could have been that. Who knows? And I had woken up that morning and said, "Hey, Butts, will you get down to the main dock and go help with those trunks?" You know, and so I'm nowhere to be found. And the way I understand it is, he ends up going down there and throws on a polo shirt and sees this stack of name badges and Sharpie markers, and ends up writing his name on there, slaps it on, walks up to the camp, throws away the job wheel, moves his bunk right as you walk into the right where a counselor would be sitting, and doesn't correct anybody, but just plays CIT. Yeah. And this goes on. And then he starts sitting at the head of the table in the mornings, and I'm sort of like, okay, I'm not sure what's going on here, but I kept my mouth shut.
But
and I guess this goes on for days. And the way I understand it is, at one point, a bunch of the kids or the other campers came up to him and was like, "Hey, we'd like to go swimming. Can you go watch us swim?"
And as everybody knows, you have to have a counselor with
you.
you.
You have to have a counselor. And
that's
when he's like, "Hang on." And then, you know,
Yeah.
He goes and finds me. He's like, "Hey, man, the gig is up, dude."
Oh
I
my
can't go.
gosh.
That story makes me smile. Butts, if you're listening, you got to send in a voice note and give us your take on that.
And
'Cause
your
Rob,
version of that.
was it 3 days that he basically played it off that he was
It
the other
must have
staff
been
guy?
3 or 4, and and I to this day, I from the minute I met him, G. Harrison Butler the Fourth. I think that's his full name, isn't it?
Yeah.
I remember reading that on the roster, but
Where did he
he
get
was
Butts
such a
from?
cool kid. What's that?
He was in my dad's canoe, I know.
Arkansas. Yeah, he grew up in Arkansas.
But I wonder where he got the name Butts from. I'm guessing.
It's just a shortened version of Butler. That's all.
Yeah, I didn't know who named him. I didn't know who named him Butts, though.
Yeah, Harry Butts.
So it's been great to reconnect with him and see him come back on the island and still be a part of camp in such a meaningful way.
I never tripped with Butts, but we saw him when my wife and I were out in San Francisco. He'd come down from the city. We were just south of the city, and we had a great time with him. He was awesome.
He's a storyteller. So yeah, Butts, definitely send us your take on the story Rob just told for sure.
Well, I'll give you another one you can write it on about Butts because I may mess this up, but I'm not even sure I should tell the story on a podcast, but we'll give it a shot. I'll try to keep it as PG as I can, but
go for it.
Butts was on a senior trip. This is secondhand. I'm getting this from my friend Bart. Bart claimed it was the worst poo of all time is how he coined this story. And it involved Butts. And I guess nature was calling, and he was in the middle of a lake or river in a canoe. So he's screaming at his bowman to paddle to get to the shore because he's got to go. So it's buggy. They're on the senior trip. It's a nasty day. The bugs are everywhere, black flies, you name it. And he jumps out of this canoe on some terrible marshy spot somewhere, and pulls his pants down to go, and he's hanging onto a sapling of some sort, leaning back. And I mean, it was awful. I mean, something hit him hard, and it was just not a good scene behind him. Well, doesn't this sapling pull out of the ground, and now Butts falls back into the what he just did into the pile, and now he's got flies all over him. His pants are down. I think he had to jump in the water. I'm not sure what he did. He had to get back in the boat and get out of there. But
shining moment for
yeah,
Bud.
yeah.
Well, now he's got to come on.
He's got to come on. We got to hear
right.
his version of this. But
we got to hear more about this.
But I heard it as the worst poo of all time. Is how Bart described it. So anyway,
that is too funny.
Yeah.
I think it was Jesse that mentioned this, but this idea that you get to go to camp and it's your favorite place on earth. And then when you become a staff person, you get to go to camp, but you get paid for it, and that's really so true that it's like a pinch me moment that you're having just as much fun as you ever did. And you're walking home with a paycheck. Some people didn't walk home with much, but it was so special. And my first year in the prep camp, I was in cabin 8A with Ken Metcalf. I think I had Chris Adams as a CIT. I think Pat Johnson, spent half the summer in there with me, but we had a bunch of great kids, and I would tell ghost stories at night. And this just comes to mind because it went off exactly as I hoped, but it was pretty rough for the kids. So I had this ghost story that was about this idea that there's a kid in their bed and they hear scratching in the walls. And the way I forget how the story goes, but it's this slow buildup and this creepy buildup. And then the scratching gets louder and louder and more intense. And it ended up being, in the ghost story, it was like this murderer that was under the bed, that ended up whatever. I forget how the story ended. But the whole point of it was that there was this ongoing scratching happening. Well, I wanted to tell this story. And so there was this one kid that I knew would be game. I had one of the other campers hide under his bunk. It was those wooden bunks in cabin 8A with a little pocket knife.
Oh, shit.
And as I'm telling the story, and the kids are all, they're preps. So they listen, they go to bed when it's time to go to bed. They lay in their beds, turned out the lights, and I'm reading this ghost story. And I rehearsed it with the kid, and he starts scratching his knife under this kid's bunk as the scratching parts are happening. And I'll tell you what, I've never seen a kid so terrified in his life.
He probably ruined him. I wonder if he came back.
I think he did. He did. Yeah. We didn't ruin the kid.
Oh, man.
I've actually got a Tim Heinley story that I'll add. You talk about being on staff and getting paid to go up there. I was a senior in high school, and I'd had a few summers at camp, and I, this is when it gets a little harder and harder to go back, and you start getting pulled in some other directions, and there's some, girlfriends involved in sports and things like that. We all know this story. I came home from school one afternoon. I'd kind of put it out there to my mom that I wasn't going to go back to camp. I was a senior in high school, getting ready to be a freshman in college. And it was winter time. And I remember I came home from school and I walk in the front door to see Tim Heinley sitting at the kitchen table with my parents. And I was like a little shocked, like, wait, what's going on? What are you doing here? And he looks at me and he goes, "Hey, I hear you're not thinking about coming back to camp this summer." And it, you guys can picture it in true Tim form, right?
That stern look. Yeah.
Yeah. And then this is a serious conversation. So I dropped my school bag and I was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna pass this year. I'm gonna, take a summer off. He's like, "Okay, well, what's this? Why?" And I was like, "Well, there's a girlfriend involved, and there's I want to make some money. I'm getting ready to be I'm getting ready to go to college. I want to put some money in my pocket." And he's like, "Okay, you want to make some money? Is that what it is?" And I was like, "Okay, how much you want to make?" And of course I didn't have an answer. I didn't know a number. Right. And he's like, and so the first number that came to my head was $3,000. And I was like, I want to make $3,000. He's like,
which at the time, Rob, was probably it was definitely more than we were being paid at a normal rate for.
Yeah. I don't know what the rate was, Jeff. I don't know if you remember what the late
probably $2,000 or something like that.
Oh, for counselors?
Yeah.
When I was there, the most I think I ever made was like $1,500 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere in that 1,500 to whatever. And I was like, okay, I want $3,000. And I thought he was going to, I thought that would be it. And he's like, okay, I think we can do that. And so then the conversation ended and I was like, shit, I guess I'm going to camp. Then obviously something happened. I had to deliver the news to my then high school girlfriend. And I think I was quickly escorted out the door of her house. And then right before I was getting ready to graduate high school, I get a train ticket in the mail and it's dated for the day after my high school graduation. And I looked at this, was like, this can't be right. Like, this is literally like the morning after I graduate high school. And I get on the phone.
From St. Louis, yeah.
From St. Louis. And I called Tim. I was like, "Tim, this train ticket that you got me was the day after I graduate high school." And he's like, "Yeah, you got that right." And I was like, "Well, this isn't going to work." He's like, "Well, you're going to earn that $3,000 somehow." So I ended up graduating high school and I'm on a train to Duluth.
Classic
St.
Tim
Louis.
Heinley, yeah.
And I step off the train and lo and behold, there's Tim Heinley standing there with a truck. He's got his khakis on and standing next to him was, remember Mark Mullen?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, fresh off the Dead tour. And I just thought to myself, what am I doing? And there was still I think there was snow on the ground. And it would have been May at some point.
Oh, yeah. I've never heard
I got
that.
to
That's
the island
hilarious.
and Austin Gonzermuller was up there. That ended up being my best summer.
Yeah. Well, and it's so classic Tim that he, it was the classic, he met you where you needed to be. But Rob, obviously you thought you kind of won that negotiation, but didn't realize what was coming.
I did some quick math. I think it's about $200 a week, I think is what the rate is.
Hey, my first year staff was in 1986. We made $600.
Wow.
And we didn't care.
Yeah.
One of the best stories I've got is Steve Shook after camp one year. Do you guys know Steve Shook?
Yeah, I know Steve.
Oh, yeah.
A bunch of us the camp was over. The kids were gone. We went down to Shay Shay's and everybody was leaving the next day or the next couple days. So there was maybe 15 staff guys down there, Steve Upson, Steve Shook, Pete Peffer, you name all these guys, Troy Balser and Shooker's got this money and he's buying everybody drinks. I said, "Shooker, what are you doing?" He said, this is my paycheck from the summer." I go, what are you doing? You're spending your whole, he's like, "You didn't come here to work for the money, did you?"
Yeah.
And I said, "No, you're right. Never." That really hit home with me. This is a guy that just loved being there and, just loved being around the guys, and the money was the least of his worries,
We didn't
come to make money. If you want to make money, to your point, you need to stay home,
And that's what, like I was saying before, you don't do it for the money, but it's just nice to have some money in your pocket when you get to go home for your next school year.
Oh, it certainly helps. Absolutely.
We'd go see Mimi on our way out to town, right? And we go down there and she'd have a little envelope of cash.
Petty cash.
Sure? Yeah, you could draw off your paycheck.
Yeah.
The summer. And there was always that story. I don't remember if there was somebody specific, but there's always the story of the one counselor that drew so much that at the end of the summer, when you go to pick up your paycheck, you actually owe camp money.
Oh, yeah. That's happened.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's happened a few times.
Oh, I love it.
Where's my paycheck? Well, actually, you owe us 20. Are you serious? Good
Yeah.
Lord.
So I was looking through the tump line as well, and one that jumped out at me because when I was in the senior camp, I was in cabin 20 most of those years, and that was my favorite cabin. Which now, back in those days, it went 21, which was more set in inland, and then it was 19 or 18, 19, 20, and 20 was on the end. Now it's set up numerically correct, where it's 18, 19, 20, 21 at the end. But 20 was at the end, and I won the token card race 2 years in a row in the senior camp because, as most people know, the odds, if the senior cabin shows up for all the events, your odds of winning the token card race, the way it was structured back then at least, were pretty good to win the token card race because there's so many less opportunities for seniors to get token cards. So all you had to do was, for half the time, was just show up and get.
Yeah, and there's so few cabins too.
And
right?
I kind of knew that. And so I remember dedicating those 2 summers to, wrangling my guys out of bed or whatever to show up to the fishing derby and the rodeo and the swim meet, the things that normally maybe people would just bail on. And I looked at the tump line. It was the summer of 99. And the guys in my cabin were Andy Barker, Stephen Dix, Pat Ecker, Jay Carrick, Kenny Roberts, Ben Roberts, 2 brothers in one cabin, which was unique, Adam Vollmer, and Sam Wyman. And the first thing that jumped out at me when I read that was, how on earth did I get such a stacked cabin? Number one. Also, no surprise. But the way the tump line reads, and I'm going to read this because it was really funny. The token card race was much closer in the second 4 weeks, but in the end, senior cabin 20 took more than 50% of the token cards awarded to the senior unit in 1999. Mike Walsh, all caps. Remember, they used to put the names in all caps.
Oh, yeah.
Mike Walsh led a senior cabin to victory for the second summer in a row, proving that good coaching does make a difference, no matter how, quote, stacked the cabin may seem to be. Members of the winning cabin, and then list the names of the guys. I miss the subtle jabs in the tump line too,
Oh, they're all over. Go way back. There's Jab City going on.
Oh, it's hilarious. I forgot about that angle of it. But yeah, I remember those 2 years in a row winning the token card race and kind of being real smug about it too, So much fun.
Yeah, Tim always had nicknames in there for people too,
So he was writing that. I mean, he was right, and because the way the tump line read, it was like a journal of the summer.
Yeah, the director would write that. Yep.
Yeah, and it was always really. I was always impressed that he managed to get almost everybody that was there was mentioned in the tump line. And I think that spoke to. And then, when you read it, you want to see if your picture's in there and you want to see if you're mentioned. And it was always so cool to see your name in all caps.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wonder if we should get back to that. That'd be a cool thing to do.
Yeah. Well, I got a couple of questions for you guys. You want to?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're ready.
I'll be interested to see what you guys
hit us with it.
So, Robbie, and then Mike, you can follow up. The toughest trip. What's the toughest trip you ever went on at camp?
Ooh.
My senior year, we did the Seal River, and that was a tough one. Most of the trip leading up to it was fine, but those last few days, we ended up getting windbound or on Hudson Bay for 2 or 3 days. Mike, per your earlier chat, Mike, maybe someone's got a different story, but I think we were windbound at the Goose Camp for 3 days.
Oh, wow.
and it was cold and it was wet. And that was a,
weren't you guys fighting off polar bears too?
Yeah, I was going to leave that out, but we'll go there.
We've mentioned polar bears on the show before.
Yeah, no, there was no shortage of them. And I'm not making this up. I think there was at least 20, 30, and some of those were a little too close for comfort.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we were there on the shores of Hudson Bay, and they had stopped paddling the bay. I think the summer before, they had decided that we're going to do that no more. And there's a whole nother story there that I'd love, Galley or Austin Gansmuller to weigh in. I think they were on that trip. But yeah, we were the first one. Jack Batstone, we're waiting for him to show up and come and get us. This was before satellite phones and a lot of that. But it ended up one day turned into 3 or 4 days, and running out of food, the whole bit. But once we got to Churchill, it was certainly a celebration. That was probably one of the harder ones.
I kind of a 2-part answer, Jeff, to your question. The first one I'll say is there was actually a backpacking trip that I went on with Chris Oakes when I was in the intermediate camp staff. And Chris was the trip head. I was his junior staff. And we went backpacking to Hell's Canyon, Oregon. And if you're not familiar with Hell's Canyon, it's on the eastern border of Oregon. Elevation wise, it's actually deeper than the Grand Canyon. And it's just kind of a big, deep V, right? That and many of the days on our trip, it was a 14-day backpacking trip. And just physically, it was one of the toughest trips I've ever been on because it was so much up and down elevation changes on these days. And it was so hot and dry. I don't think we anticipated that being a factor. And cactus, I remember getting caught in a windstorm one night and we had to hop up out of our tents and shift our tents so the wind wouldn't blow them down. And I stepped flat-footed onto a cactus and I spent 2 hours that night with the tweezers pulling, cactus, whatever, prickly things out of the bottom of my feet. That was fun. But the canoe trip I'm thinking of that was the toughest one was one summer, Ascan. It was my senior trip. I did my senior trip my second year as my CIT year. And Ascan was known for packing light when it comes to food. And he already packs real light, which was kind of a thing, a characteristic of him. And somehow in the process of getting our gear from camp to the bus to the, put-in point, we lost a Duluth sack, a meat sack, as we used to call them. That was full of food. So we actually got a day into the trip when we realized that we were down about 80 pounds worth of food for this 18-day canoe trip. So it was a pure accident, but that one became the toughest because it was the knife. It was the Knife River. And I've never been more starving for so long in my life. I mean, it was true hunger. And you're hungry already on these trips, even when you bring ample amounts of food, because you are just working all day, every day. We were so hungry, and it was really tough. There was a couple nights where our one meal was just the bag of mixed veggies, and that was our dinner for the whole night because we had to ration out all of our food.
Wow!
And we were, of course, fishing and trying to catch every wild bird that we saw. I mean, everything that moved, we were trying to capture and kill.
Right.
I remember seeing you when you guys got back from that trip, Mike. I was just reminded.
Oh, we were like amazing.
And I was like, how was the trip? And I remember you pulled your shirt up and you could see all your ribs.
Yeah. Oh, it was brutal.
You're like, yeah, we were pretty hungry.
I need to go on one of those trips right now. Good Lord, just to drop a few. It gets tougher as you get older, man.
That's a great question, Coles. Yeah, I'd have to say that senior trip. And that was Dexter Davison took that one out. There was Dexter Davison and Tom Hanley.
Yeah, well, you brought up, and if anybody Mike's got a great point about people chiming in about these stories. But I think one of the last groups to paddle, I paddled it when I was a senior, the Bay.
I did too.
Out of the Knife. And one of the last groups that did it, apparently there was some fog that rolled in.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing Dexter saying, okay, we're going to aim he put like the staff guys on the end and he was behind and put all the senior campers in the middle. And they took off with a compass reading.
Yeah.
And Dexter honestly said, I honestly didn't think everybody, because they couldn't see each other.
So I think I was with Dexter on that trip.
Okay. That could have been your trip. And I think that's what ended it.
Well, and I have a very vivid memory of that crossing because I think it's about 6 miles from the Knife Delta over.
It's a little longer than that.
Yeah, like maybe 6 to 8 miles, something like that, right? And it's not that far of a distance. But once you leave the shore,
you're out there.
Within about a half hour, you feel like you're in the middle of the ocean.
You're out there.
That's right. You can't see shore.
Well, no. Yeah, and it was foggy that day, right? So our visibility was pretty low. And I'll never forget because it wasn't, we were waiting and waiting for the right time to go do it. And then we woke up one morning and it was like calm. There was no wind, which normally is really windy on the shores, And so we headed out. But even when there's no wind, those rollers, the ocean movement is just kind of like not what you're used to. And so you're paddling along at a normal clip. And I remember looking to my left and right. And you'd look over and see the other, 10, 12 canoes, because all 3 of the trips were together at that point. And so you see all the other canoes, and then you see half of them go up, and then they go down, and the other half come up and then you can't see the other boats.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, Alex Ernst was in my bow. I was actually in a 3-man aluminum Grumman for my senior trip, which was great for, having to carry the canoe on portages because it was much lighter. But we had 3 guys, and Will Bennett was my middleman. And about an hour into the trip, Alex started getting seasick in the bow of the boat, and he couldn't even paddle. And so we had to switch Will out and put Will in the front, and Alex just kind of went fetal position in the middle of the canoe, like moaning, And I look over, and I see Dexter in the stern of his boat about, maybe quarter mile away. And I look over and I see him take a paddle stroke, bend down, pick up his bailer, barf into it, dump it, paddle stroke. Bend down, barf into it, paddle stroke. He did that 3 or 4 times. And I remember looking over like, whoa, this is serious.
Was he wearing that famous red raincoat?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think he was. But it was,
that was it, man. I looked for that raincoat on the horizon many times.
It was wild. And I think that was, I think Rob, they had called it on your year that was the last time they're going to do it. But then of course circumstances changed, and we were supposed to be picked up, and they weren't coming, or whatever it was, whatever circumstances were. And we made the call to just do it. And I do think that might've been the last time it was done.
And we were the first group to not bring a firearm on that trip. And fortunately we had found a stash of blasting caps at a abandoned mine.
Wow.
On Southern Indian Lake, or no, it was in, I can't remember what lake it was, but those came in handy scaring the bears off.
Oh yeah.
On Hudson Bay. So
yeah, you brought up a name, Jack Badstone. I heard a story. I wasn't there. I forget who told me the story, and I could have the names wrong. But I want, I'm not going to do it justice on a podcast. You got to kind of see it to make it, but I'll try my best to describe it. Batstone came to pick the group up. He was going to boat him over. He's got this big, boat that he comes over in and loads of canoes up a couple at a time and takes people over and shuttles them. And I think, and they can call in and correct me, I thought it was Sam Isham and McGarry. Is Sam McGarry maybe?
Charlie or Sam, yeah.
One of them. I thought it was Sam maybe. And they were in a boat together. And one of them, I thought it was Sam. And I could have, maybe wasn't Sam. It was somebody.
Or Matt. There's a Matt McGarry as well.
Well, yeah. I don't know who it was, but they found a moose antler on like day 2.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to keep this moose antler. So for 18 days, the sternman is bitching about portaging this damn moose antler for 18 days, okay? Every time they went to bed, he's screaming at his buddy, that this moose antler is like, this is a true story.
Yeah.
So now, fast forward, they're at the Delta. They're waiting. Here comes Batstone out on the boat, and they're paddling out there trying to time up the waves. And they paddle up, and they hanging on to Batstone's boat. And he's like, all right, he's got his arms out. He's like, now hand me your stuff. They're on the side of his boat. And so one of them takes the moose antler and throws it up to Batstone. Batstone turns, whips it out the other side of the boat into the water, turns back around with his arms out. He goes, all right, give me the next thing. And McGarry's like, God, what the hell just happened? For 18 days, I look at it, it's in the bottom of the freaking Hudson Bay now.
Yeah.
That's a true story. Absolutely.
I've heard that story before. It cracks me up.
I think those are the characters involved, but I can't remember. But I would have died laughing.
The sad look on the face of the kid and the counselor that dealt with that thing for 3 weeks.
I think they were both campers. I think. Yeah. Now I've asked questions about trips before. I mean, I don't do something at camp here. I mean, you've kind of already answered it, Mike. If you could go back and if there was one camping on the island that you enjoyed being in, what was it?
Oh yeah, mine was 20 for sure.
Yours was 20.
That was
I heard
my home away
yeah.
from home. I think I was just in there for 3 straight summers, and it was my favorite.
Is it because it was the senior camp, or you liked the?
Yeah, the location of it. I mean, it was. I think it was the camper cabin that was the closest physically to the water. Right, cabin 2, I think would probably be the next closest one, or cabin 17 down there. But I think one time I actually measured it, and it was 12 steps from the front door of that cabin onto the senior dock, which was so nice because you just roll out of bed and hop in the water in the morning. Yeah. Cabin 2 holds a special place because it was my first cabin and the oldest cabin, and then cabin 6 was really fun back when they had the steps up from the main area. That was a really fun cabin to be in.
Robbie?
Cabin 4, I was in Cabin 4 with Bobby Moore. And
oh gosh, there's a name.
That first year, I had great memories of that. And then as a junior counselor, I was in Cabin 1. I think they've moved it back a little bit.
It's been rearranged. The junior camp's gone under a lot of changes in the junior camp for sure.
Yeah, but I would take that one over too, just because it's got better light and you could polar bear. And then the other one was 16. I always thought 16 was a cool cabin. It was like right there next to the bell, and you could roll out of bed and right to the dining hall. So,
oh yeah, and 16 had that cool deck over
that cool deck.
Yeah,
that had a cool porch.
Yeah, I think that's a Dave Nyland design. He was the same guy he was an old camp guy. He's an architect from Cincinnati, but he designed the junior Biffy that's there now, and he also did the old trip center prior to the one there is now, the one that you guys knew about. It was on the back down there by the sailing shack.
Yeah, it had the 4 porches.
He designed that as well.
Yeah, that architecture you're right, that is all over the island.
It's a little, you can tell his design's a little bit the crazy roofs and things like that, but that's who designed, I think, Cabin 16. Yeah.
You're right, Rob. 16 was cool. That was the one summer I was in the intermediate camp with TJ Samanchian. I was in Cabin 16. I loved that cabin. And
it had those stadium chairs on the front porch, and we would sit out front.
Well, and there's one closer, but it's right there next to the dining hall, which was so great.
Yeah. So,
well, guys, I mean, we could sit here all day, I think, but
this was fun.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I could sit and talk to you guys forever. I wish we were sitting at Thunderbird or something right now. But is there anything else before we sign off? Or
the one thing I wanted to talk about was, again, Jeff, just to thank you for leading the charge on this podcast. It's been so much fun to help out with it and to line up these individuals that tell these stories, and I just hope this podcast just keeps going. And I'll reiterate, if anybody out there listening wants to be part of the podcast, it's an open invite. Let's get more voices on here. And, in kind of a fun way, if you're hearing a story or two that involves you, or you have a different perspective on it, then, open your iPhone or whatever and record a voice note and send it in. And we'll try to react to it and have some fun with it,
Yeah. Now, Robbie, you going back up this summer at the end?
Yeah, I'll be up there.
Good.
I've got a 14-year-old that'll be first year intermediate, and then I've got a 11-year-old daughter who's going to be up at Ogeechee, and they're all in. They are all in, Jeff, which has been really cool.
I'm glad you mentioned the kids, Rob, because I think again, it's when we think about camp, I think once I finished my staff run, and as a lot of guys do, and you kind of develop your career path and lose touch a little bit with camp. In the back of my mind, I always knew that one day my kids would go, and here we are, and it's my daughter is going to be doing her 4th summer at Ogeechee next summer. She did 8 weeks last year. She drank the Kool-Aid 100% and is just all about camp.
Bug juice.
She drank the bug juice. Exactly.
That's right.
And
bug juice.
And then my son, Ted, he'll be a junior this summer. For 4 weeks, second session. And they are, it's just so cool to see the kids going. And, for Rob and I and Pat and his wife, Carla, their kids go as well. And so now it's become a way for us to hang out in the summertime up in Minnesota, and see guys like you, Jeff, and connect with all those people. And so it's become kind of our way of staying connected, and a summer gathering is, up there's no place better.
Well, it's great. I'm excited that the Walsh name continues to walk the paths of both Ogeechee and Kooch. It's a wonderful family. I've had the pleasure of meeting you guys and having you as campers, and I just can't wait to see you guys again this summer as we visit up there. And thanks again for the stories, and let's keep telling them. And it was fun having you on this episode today. Thanks, guys.
You got it, Jeff. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. This was great.